The following program is being brought to you by Reign of Fire Radio, a media outreach arm of Reign of Fire Evangelical Ministries. Our commitment is to sponsor programs that will assist in living a Christian life and win others through teaching the finished work of Jesus Christ. Welcome to Delivered or Deceived with your host, Rand Berkey. Rand is a former cult member who now educates people on the dangers of these types of groups, as well as people who would seek to exploit and terrorize others. Rand has devoted his life to providing assistance to those who have been hurt. No one wants to be led through the wilderness by a guide who has never been there. He has, and his desire is that you will find yourself delivered and not deceived.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Rand Berkey, and welcome to Reign of Fire Christian Radio. Tonight, we're going to talk about Delivered from Deception, which is my story. But as on every broadcast, I like to set the stage for sharing one of the foundational scriptures of Reign of Fire Evangelical Ministries, as well as Reign of Fire Christian Radio. In Luke 4:17 through 19, it states, "And Jesus was handed the book of the prophet Isaiah. And when he had opened the book, he found the place where it was written, 'The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the recovery of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord.' Christ is the message, and I am only the bearer of the message." I'd like to set the stage by giving you some background of the time that I got in and what was the social climate, because this is going to be fairly important to set into context my story. So here it is in the late 60s and the 70s. Of course, everybody's heard one way or the other about Charles Manson. It was the time of the 60s, the time of civil unrest, the time of the Civil War, the time of the Equal Rights Amendment, of African Americans fighting for their equality within society. People were unsure. It was a time of free love. It was a time for self-expression and spiritual awareness. There was two different veins of what was going on. One was the revival of the Christian church and the new founding of the spiritual gifts, which had laid dormant except in some denominations, but it exploded out on the scene. Not that it wasn't there, but it wasn't so prolific. On the other hand, you had groups like the New Age groups. You had Satanism. You had Transcendental Meditation, Hinduism, Hare Krishnas, Moonies, that came up through the ranks through the time, that this vacuum of uncertainty allowed these things to flourish and grow. Of course, this was the time of the Vietnam War, so unpopular, and the military, the individuals that didn't dodge the draft, that went in and served their country, came back vilified, reviled, being called baby killers. And here is a group of people, of young people, and that was the youngest military that there ever was, coming back to any less than a welcoming society. And then you have those issues there, the finding of what was recognized later as post-traumatic stress syndrome, which we will get back into a little bit when I'm talking about cults. However, it's in this environment in the late 60s and in the 70s which these groups flourished. Now, they continued to flourish throughout the 80s as well, and they took on a different tone, and we'll be talking about that later because of my experiences after my experience in the group. However, also, the time that I was involved in this group, that I got involved with a group, was like 2 or 3 months later than what happened in Jonestown, Guyana, where 913 people were killed or committed suicide. Shortly after that, I was involved in the group that I was in for 6 years. So it's in the middle of this civil unrest, upon this uncertainty about the Depression, about our political leaders almost getting impeached, with the uncertainty there, with the trying to get out of Vietnam and that conflict over there, the war, that was a boiling point for different groups, people that's trying to find the answers, trying to find peace. Instead of looking for peace outward, they started looking for peace inward. Not only did we have religious cults, we had political cults. Two of the biggest political cults happened back in the 1900s with, or the 20th century, with the rise of communism and fascism. But even before that, in the 1800s, when there was another revival, started the groups as the Mormons, the Jehovah's Witnesses, the Masonics, Theosophy, seances, and which was the basis of the New Age movement. We had all these things going around from the time of the late 1800s to the early 1900s, and it just continued. But the real recognition of what was going on was the envelopment of all sorts of other religions from other countries coming in and trying to make their mark and take their place within the fabric of the American society. So it's within all of this that unsuspecting people like me and others were getting involved in Christian-based groups that said that they were the true believers, that they believed in Jesus Christ, but come to find out that their view of Jesus wasn't the view of the Christian church and the identity of Christ, which the Christian church did not see within these cults. But these cults are the ones that said that they were right, and it was a very heady thing, a very empowering thing to think that you knew more truth than any other denomination out there, any other person out there, and the way to enlightenment was through me or through my group. Within this context is my story. I grew up in a farming community, an agricultural community. The nearest big city was 15-20 miles away. I grew up farmland. My graduating class was about 88 people, and we were very, very isolated from where we were. There was only one African American person within my class, or really two within it at that time, the whole school system. We did not understand that race. We didn't understand a lot of different things because we were so isolated within our communities. So when the big bad world comes crashing in and the person's caught unaware about all these different things that are going on with it, which is outside of our reality. Maybe that's something that we see on TV, but not certainly something that will touch me. John Kennedy being assassinated, that happened when I was really young. Still young, but Robert Kennedy's assassination. The impeachment of Nixon, or the attempted impeachment of Nixon, Helter Skelter, and the Manson family. The Vietnam War. The civil unrest, like I said. All this was going around in turmoil, and people were just searching for identity. They were looking for God, they were looking for answers. And that's the introduction of the climate in which I got involved. So here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to be opening up the book and my story, but I'm going to start at the end of the book. And it's not at the very end, but it's going to give you a context of what I'm talking about. So the title of the chapter is Islands of Isolation in the Sea of a Democracy. And the subpoint is all animals are created equal, but some animals are created more equal than others, and that's from The Animal Farm by George Orwell. You know, the Constitution of the United States draws a line between church and state. The Founding Fathers drew the line for a specific reason. They had learned from history that government of the people, by the people, and for the people should also protect the people. Many early immigrants came to this country to escape religious persecution, resulting from the government utilizing particular religious institutions to manipulate, suppress, and control its people. They did not want a reputation of past persecutions, so they formed a government that was to be neutral to all religions. For this reason, our many religious organizations in the United States today are all afforded the protection of the Constitution. However, what happens when some of these organizations abuse their rights and deny others their freedoms? What happens when children are denied medicine or medical attention because their parents believe their holy book tells them that such an action are their rights? What happens when some self-proclaimed holy man tells his people the world is about to end and it would be better to die at their own hands than from the presumed evil of the world? What happens when children are led into prostitution because it is the best way to gain converts and to show your love for the leader? What happens when the group is told to destroy by any means people that may expose their true motives? What happens when the groups stockpile guns and ammunition to start a new world order? What happens when bigotry and intolerance allows groups to persecute whomever they fear are their enemies? What happens when thousands of innocent people die at the hands of a few, believing it is their duty and even more, their destiny, to destroy the supposed infidels? I could go on with these examples, and by no means are any of these manufactured. What can be infuriating is the groups that do such things are the first to cry foul when they think some right has been taken from them, with little thought about the rights that have been taken from their victims. Cults have no problem whatsoever in denying basic rights of their members, and their attempts to suppress the criticism of their detractors can become violent. They convince their followers that denial and self-sacrifice are for the good of the whole, and they ultimately will be rewarded, if not in this life, then in the next. The commitment and servitude would seem to be something to be admired, with one important exception, because they believe that they have been chosen and are enlightened ones who will save the world and lead all others that are willing to the truth. They are also allowed to destroy all those that would stand in their path. In addition, what is to be said about the issues of mind control, thought reform, and the more sensationalized term brainwashing? Groups would like to deny the existence of such overt manipulation, but by using experts to disclaim that they do not really exist and are only manufactured by those people that have something against the groups. These groups would have us believe their converts freely choose to become members as my group did, without first giving the recruits enough information to make a fully informed decision. Some would say that even the use of the word cult is a derogatory term, itself a buzzword, a label used by others to incite intolerance and hatred. A question, though, remains to be answered. If brainwashing is such a foreign concept, why are there over 1 billion people still under communist rule? Is their